You are now listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. This is Paul McGUIRE, and we are going to continue on talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and its impact on America and its impact on the world. The colossal negative impact, and to whatever degree, hopefully, a positive impact. Now, let's get back to the dynamics at hand. So this AI, artificial intelligence revolution, essentially was created by the globalist elite because their goal is, in their own writings, I've written about it in great detail in my books, like Power from on High, like A Prophecy of the Future of America, Volume 1 and Volume 2, like The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World, and many other books, The Day the Dollar Died, all available at discounts at paulmcguire.us. And by the way, we cannot do what we're doing. And this is one of the most important messages you could possibly get out. We can't do it without your help. And I'm asking you to ask God, because I'm assuming that you talk to God on a regular basis. And I suspect that most of you do talk to God on a regular basis. So since you talk to God, simply ask God, God, hello? And I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm just trying to be lighthearted about it. God, hello? And then say, God, do you want me to help the Paul McGUIRE Report communicate the truth of the Bible, win souls for Jesus Christ, give God's people and others knowledge, which is wisdom, and reach people and change the direction that this nation is going in? Do you want me to give a donation or contribution and partner with Paul? And Lord, if you do, speak to me. I need to hear from you, God. I need to hear from your voice on what I should do. I commit my way to you, and I ask that you would guide and lead me regarding this decision. So Lord, show me what you would have me give, how much you would have me give in terms of a donation, contribution, or gift. And then I pledge, Lord, by your grace and help, I will obey whatever you say, Lord. And if you tell me not to give, then I'm free from giving, because I've given up my rights to controlling my own life. You're Lord of my life, God. So show me and speak to me. In Jesus' name, I pray that every person, Lord, that obeys you, whether that means they're not going to give, then so be it. As long as the Lord has cleared them for that, I'm fine with it. Or if the Lord has told them to give a certain amount, whatever that amount is, small or large or whatever, the key is that you are in a place in your life where Jesus is Lord and you're going to obey him. And whatever God tells you to give, give. And then you can trust him to bless you and cover you, because he then knows that you're a faithful steward of his resources and his supplies. He knows that if he wants to bless other people or reach other people, that you're a faithful and obedient transmitter, if you will, of those blessings. You're not going to hoard it or block it or short circuit it. You're going to continue on with the intention of God. You're going to continue on with the plan of God. So Lord, bless. Let your blessing and guidance and wisdom be poured out upon every person listening, God. In Jesus' name, amen. And you can do that at paulmcguire.us. Okay, so the globalist elite created artificial intelligence for a variety of reasons. Primary reason is they don't have to rely on human labor. Human labor is a problem for the globalist elite because they want to rule the world via a digital dictatorship. What the Great Reset really is, it's a scam for a total takeover of planet Earth. And that means to turn the people of planet Earth into their slaves, and slaves that have been disarmed so that they cannot rebel. So turning the world over to be ruled by artificial intelligence, robots, androids, clones, etc., is a very effective and cost-effective mechanism of total control and total surveillance that the globalist elite can use to establish a global dictatorship, which is ultimately Luciferian in nature. And that's according to their own writings, their own books, and their own speeches. I was looking at a picture, and in the picture, it was, I hate it when you can't remember something that you know and talk about it all the time. Oh, Rothschild. It was a close-up picture of the head Rothschild, who is head of this present time Rothschild financial empire. So Rothschild was in the picture, and then this famous satanic artist, Maria Abramovic. I believe that she was Lady Gaga's handler, and she is a ruthless satanic high priestess in the highest order. So it tells it all. I mean, if the head Rothschild is standing shoulder to shoulder with Maria Abramovic, the world's most powerful satanic high priestess and artist, their connection, Rothschild and Maria Abramovic, their connection tells you everything you want to know. I mean, birds of a feather flock together. So they are, very rarely do you see visible pictures of who the globalist elite may be. And I'm not going to take the picture farther than the picture takes it. But I think if you saw the picture, you would find it quite provocative and quite revealing and quite interesting. Because the people at the very top of this control system that is currently ruling planet Earth are Satanists. They said they're Satanists. I'm not, I didn't make the term up. This is what they've been saying about themselves for hundreds of years, in fact, thousands of years. And so what this is really all about from a spiritual perspective is the implementation of a satanic and Luciferian global system, which allows Satan or Lucifer to totally control planet Earth through his proxy rulers, the globalist elite, the trillionaire and billionaire families. And so this is the juggernaut. This is why so many people, when you raise the level of conversation up to this very high level, it overloads their brain because it blows out all the preconceived ideas that they had about the nature of reality of their world. And all of a sudden, they're discovering for the first time in their lives that the world is not anything like they thought it was, and that this world is really a multidimensional world in which and quantum physics has burst the dam on this. Quantum physics has told scientists and us that there are at least 15 different dimensions. Whereas when I was a kid, and many of you were kids, we were taught in school, according to the scientific method, that there were only the dimensions of our physical senses. And if you couldn't touch, taste, smell, or see, etc., something, then that something didn't exist. The only thing that could stand up to scientific verification was the fact that you could perceive it with your senses. But then quantum physics came to the forefront and began teaching that there are at least 15 different dimensions that we operate in or interface in. So these people are doing, underneath all of this is the biblical account of Bible prophecy that began in the book of Genesis and will finish in the book of Revelation. It's playing out in our lifetime. And so they want to enslave the masses. When they talk about a 15-minute city, they're talking about, I remember when the state of New York, when I was a kid growing up in New York City, my father and the family would drive around, sometimes would be on the highways to different neighborhoods, and we would see these massive construction developments all over, going on for miles. It would be one 6, 7, 10-story building after another. And they were not attractive buildings. They were apartment buildings, small apartments, no trees or bushes. They were ugly. They were ugly, and there was a lot of garbage. And even though they were built rather recently, they looked like wrecks with garbage and gangs and graffiti painted everywhere. And I would always ask my father about this because I couldn't understand it when he was driving the car. I said, "Dad, what are all those apartment buildings?" And he'd say to me, "Those are the projects, Paul." I said, "Well, what are the projects?" The projects is just a term that means these are the government, the state of New York. All these buildings that you're looking at are special housing projects built by the state of New York government. The government builds all this low-income houses with taxpayer money, and they're called the projects. And I said, isn't this a good thing? And he said, yeah, it would be a good thing, except, and he didn't mean it as a racist statement. Today, it would be considered a racist statement, but I can't worry about that. My concern is telling the truth. The problem is every one of us is a product of our environment. So if we're raised in a ghetto, or a crime zone or whatever we're raised in, we adopt the mentality, we adopt the brain, we adopt the thinking, we develop, in this case, a ghetto mentality. So what would happen is the government would take the people out of ramshackle, run-down buildings and houses that were just really not fit for human beings, and then they would transfer them into these. When they were built, they looked good. These 10-story buildings that were small but nice apartments. But after a year or two went by, these nice apartments, and they had thousands and thousands and thousands of apartments and massive housing building projects all over the place. But they looked deteriorated. They looked old. They looked worn. There was garbage and graffiti everywhere. And I say, well, Dad, if these were just built in the last year or two, how come they're so run down? How come there's graffiti? He said, Paul, that this is the problem. The problem is that people are impacted. People's minds are formed by the environment and the area which they grew up in or live in. They're very much a product of the environment that they live in. So all of these people were taken out of very bad, falling apart neighborhoods with lots of crime and gangs and stuff. And then they were just put into these newer projects buildings. And it seemed like a great idea, but the problem is that the buildings were new. The buildings would have been a good thing. The buildings were new, but the people were old, in the sense that the people were not new. They still had the old negative habit patterns, the old negative lifestyles, which created like ghettos in the first place. So when you brought these people into the housing projects, they simply brought the old ghetto lifestyles, the gangs, the graffiti, the prostitution, the drug sales, the garbage and stuff. It just destroyed the projects. So the projects are now a big embarrassment for the government of New York, and it's a testimony, because they were very controversial to begin with. A lot of people feared that this would happen, and it did. And so it's a testimony of the fact that unless you change people, unless you really change people for the better, it's not enough to move them into a new place that looks nice unless you first change them. You're just going to repeat the entire thing. And that was very interesting. So this applies to the 15-minute cities. The 15-minute cities are a very low-cost way for state governments all across the United States, if they comply to all these rules and exact formulas and exact specifications on how to build a 15-minute city according to the United Nations. And if they submit to the United Nations Authority, they'll get a certain amount of tax breaks in terms of building 15-minute cities. But 15-minute cities, now this is me imposing my idea in the flow of the idea, these 15-minute cities, when the day is done, will end up being as ramshackle, broken down with gangs and drugs and graffiti and prostitution and crime. The 15 you'll take, because government bureaucrats don't want to learn any lesson. They don't want to learn. They just want to control and dominate. The same with the United Nations. The United Nations doesn't want to learn. It just wants to control and dominate. So what will happen is they'll build the 15 cities, which appear to be nice, and they will be physically nicer than a lot of the ghettos that people were living in. And then they're going to take hundreds of thousands of people out of the ghettos and out of other neighborhoods, and they're going to put them in these 15-minute cities with these newer buildings, and supposedly it's going to be a nicer looking place. But the problem is everybody's not paying attention to the rule of human nature unless you radically and fundamentally change the psychological, spiritual mindset of people who came from ghettos, and now you're putting them in 15-minute cities. All you're going to do in a matter of 2 short years is you're going to end up reinventing your 15-minute city, and your 15-minute city is going to look like a broken down ghetto with spray paint, graffiti, with gangs walking the streets and prostitutes, with heroin and fentanyl and drugs being sold, with shootings and murders happening. And the 15-minute city, although the UN and everybody, made a big deal about it, it's going to look every bit as bad as a broken down ghetto, crime-ridden, drug-ridden, prostitute-ridden. It'll be a nightmare. It won't be some glamorous globalist utopia. It will be a living nightmare. And so that's what's going to happen. Then the other thing is, because you see, when you turn these very high level thinking decisions over to selfish bureaucrats, you're begging for disaster. The other thing that's going to happen is you're going to create a 15-minute city, and then you're going to bring in the people, like with those Malibu fires and the other areas, Eaton, California, the other areas that were all burned down in the recent fires. Okay, so they're building 15-minute cities in a lot of these areas. But in a 15-minute city, you're not allowed to drive your car freely in and out of the city. There's all kinds of restrictions due to environmental concerns. So now you're bringing people from all different backgrounds, ethnic groups, economic backgrounds. You're bringing people from ghettos and rundown neighborhoods. You're bringing people from more middle-class areas. I think the upper-class areas are going to fight it. And so you're going to bring people from different ethnic groups, different sexual groups, different belief systems, different religions, and then you're going to arbitrarily throw them all together in these tightly knit 15-minute cities with the completely ridiculous expectation that they're going to get along and they're going to integrate and everything is going to go great. And it's not going to go great. There's going to be literally sociological warfare occurring in the 15-minute cities. All of these people with different and diverse identities, ethnic groups, racial groups, sexual identities, whether they come from Europe, whether they come from Mexico, whether they come from Venezuela. You can't just, liberals, conservatives, Asian people, you can't just throw people together that are different in many different ways and expect them to get along in this, utopian harmony. It's not going to happen. In fact, there is going to be resentment, there's going to be violence, and there's going to be a blowback that's going to be very ugly. And now government doesn't learn. So you go to the New York projects, it didn't work there. Other states that did the equivalent of the New York projects, it didn't work in any of the other states. When you jam people together from all these different diverse groups and force them to live together, it's going to cause a sociological explosion. It will not work. And so you're going to have elderly people with young people. The elderly people will not be safe because these 15 minutes are going to be ghettoized. And don't think they're not. They will be. Fentanyl will be sold in the 15-minute cities. And then the government will put in more police, more cameras, more electronic totalitarian surveillance methods. It'll be just like communist China. The whole 15-minute city and all around it will be flooded with tens of thousands of video cameras, computer surveillance, satellite surveillance, EMF technology. It'll be like an electronic concentration camp. No, I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you how it's actually going to be versus the dysfunctional fantasy sales pitch you're getting. It's going to be a mean, mean place because they don't care. You see, what you're assuming that the globalist elite, the trillionaire, billionaire families who spout off this nonsense about 15-minute cities and all the rest of the stuff, you're making the very erroneous mistake that you think that they care about you. Not only do they not care about you, they're doing everything they possibly can to make you extinct by poisoning your food, poisoning the water, poisoning the air, messing with your neurological system with electromagnetic frequencies. You think all of this potpourri of toxic stuff is happening by accident? No, it's deliberate. It's to dumb you down, fry your brain, and take you out early. Now, I know this is tough talk, and I know I'm rocking the boat for a lot of you. Some of you are tempted to turn me off because this is just too intense, and I can't handle it. But let me tell you something before you do a single thing. Pause. Not the pause button, but hit the pause button in your brain regarding your finger. I have spent 50 years researching and studying this. I have been in locations where trials of government projects and all kinds of things failed before people's very eyes. I remember living in Jackson Heights, Queens, when the U.S. government, the federal government, forced integration upon the entire nation. It was forced. Every city, every community had to abide by the new immigration laws or, severe fines, jail, imprisonment, financial penalties. When you tried to force, this is not about being a racist, but when you tried to force against their will African Americans, Hispanics, and whites to go on bus to take a bus to go to school, and sometimes the bus ride would be 2 hours each way. You think kids from ghetto neighborhoods are happy that they had to take a bus ride for 2 hours to get to an integrated school? No, they weren't happy. They were angry. And when you threw them all together with the white kids, there was fights, there was violence, there were threats in the schools, and there was basically war breaking out in the schools. The government, the federal government, did not care. They kept this law. I don't know if it's still in effect, but it was in effect for decade after decade after decade. And there was war, and there was violence, and there was gangs, and there was shootings, and there was drugs. Nothing was good about it. It didn't help the African Americans, the Hispanic, and the other communities, and it didn't help the white people. Everybody got the wrong end of the stick. So I've seen these government programs. They don't work. They're formulated by a bunch of yahoos in Washington, D.C., who never walked through a real neighborhood. Okay, so back to the 15-minute cities. The 15-minute cities will end up like the public schools did when they forced integration. Remember, you have the heart-tugging lies of the liberals about how this is going to teach us to love everybody, but that's not how it played out. Nobody wanted it. And the worst thing was, the most punitive thing was, is that they forced people from the African American neighborhood, the Hispanic neighborhood, and other neighborhoods, they forced them, their school children, to get on public school buses and often drive in a public school bus, bumper to bumper city traffic. They had to drive the bus 2.5 hours until they went from the African American neighborhood, etc., to the white school neighborhood where they had the integrated school. And sometimes they would have the white kids take a bus 2.5 hours from the white neighborhood so they could go to an integrated school 2.5 hours away in a African American neighborhood. It was a mess. So every example I've ever seen in my life of forced integration, forcing people into 15-minute cities, forcing them into projects, forcing them into government housing, it always fails horrendously. And we're out of time for today, but I want to summarize your thinking on this by saying the following. The reason it all happens, and until you deal with the ultimate reason as to why it happens, until you process that thinking, you will never be free. You will never be able to set anybody else free. You're going to be a prisoner in a world that you despise. You must come to terms with acquiring the knowledge it takes to really know what's going on. So let me spill it out in a nutshell. The reason it always goes bad, and it always does go bad, it never goes good, by the way, that's a fact. The reason it all goes bad is because the people in charge of it, the people in control of it, the people that want it, the ultimate rulers of our land, the globalist elite that consists of billionaire, trillionaire families, and this is what you really need to own. This is a hard truth that I'm telling you. If you want to be free, you've got to own this truth. You've got to know this truth. You can't just putz around it because you're afraid of it. This is an ugly, nasty, mean truth. But the only way you're going to find freedom is you're going to have to process and think about this ugly, nasty, evil truth. And here is what it is. This is what I'm getting at. The people that are in charge, the secret, occult, Luciferian, and satanic elite that truly rule planet Earth and America through secret societies and all kinds of control systems, they see themselves as superior evolutionary beings. They see themselves as genetically DNA superior to the rest of us. And as such, due to their superior DNA, and the Illuminati bloodline families believe that their DNA comes from the fallen angels and the Illuminati bloodline. That's why they try to intermarry and breed only within their own DNA pool. It's these people that are ruling planet Earth. And so their game plan is to enslave planet Earth, take over planet Earth. They have this fictitious belief that the Earth is overpopulated, so they intend to kill off countless millions of what they believe are excess population. And after they do a culling of the herd, which is a mass killing off of billions and billions of people, what they really want to do is put them in concentration camps. What they really want to do is put them in ovens and burn their bodies. What they really want to do is put them in the showers where they die inhaling poisonous gas. But you see, the world still remembers Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and what the Nazis did in Germany and other nations during World War II. The world still remembers the horrors, and the globalist elite knows that. So they have so much money. Remember, the globalist elite that run the world, they only represent 1% of the total population of planet Earth. But that 1% controls the other 99% of all the resources and wealth of planet Earth. So they can spend billions of dollars and it's nothing to them. And so in order to get away, in order to hide their scheme, in order for them to hide their crime and get away with it, they have to cover up the brutality of it. They have to hide the cruelty of it before the masses. They can't let the people know what they're really up to, because the people would revolt if the people really knew what they were up to. And so they're camouflaging, they're covering up the fact that indeed they're doing basically just what they did under Hitler, Adolf Hitler, in Nazi Germany during World War II. The horror of the concentration camps, the killing of 35 million people in the Holocaust, the ovens burning bodies, the gas chambers killing people, the firing squads, the piles of naked bodies, the horror, the ugliness, the brutality was recorded in history everywhere. But they don't want to show that now. They're more sophisticated. So they're covering it up. It's like they're putting a big white sheet over the dastardly deeds that they're really doing. They're hiding it. And how are they hiding it? They're hiding it with sophisticated mind control operations, psyops. They're hiding it with deliberate illusions. They're hiding it with disinformation. They're hiding it with psyops campaigns where they lie. Okay, I want to reframe your mind now with the truth. Think of whatever conception you have of 15-minute cities brought to you by the globalist elite. But then take the horror of Nazi Germany and the concentration camps under Adolf Hitler in World War II and merge it with the 15-minute cities. So now I'm revealing to you the secret strategy of the globalist elite from a PR standpoint, from the standpoint of merchandising, promoting, and propaganda, from the perspective of hiding what you're really doing. They're making it look like they're creating an artificial reality. They're making it look like that they're building a utopia just for you and your family. They're making it look like that they're creating a kind of paradise for you and your family. They're making it look like everything's going to be great and all your needs are going to be taken care of, because they keep programming you to believe those lies with psychological propaganda. That's why Klaus Schwab of the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum said these chilling words: you will own absolutely nothing, but you will never be happier in your whole life, which is a complete contradiction. But yeah, you will own absolutely nothing in the 15-minute city. And you will think, because you will be brainwashed, that you've never been happier in your life. But in reality, you'll be miserable. And that's what's coming. The warnings of the secular writers like Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, or George Orwell, Big Brother in 1984 novel, or Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 novel, where the fire department is called to find hidden books in houses and burn the books in the public square. All of these sci-fi novels that dealt with a nightmarish utopia. All of these authors, like the Huxleys and the others, they were warning the human race, but they were also using predictive programming. They were trying to get the human race to be desensitized and be ready to accept it. But they were also warning about it. And everything they warned about in their novels is coming to pass via this United Nations 15-minute city Agenda 2030, this nightmare, hellish, covert operation designed to take over planet Earth. And now hear me well and hear me good. History tells us that when these kind of economic, sociological, political, totalitarian mechanisms start to move forward, history tells us that there is always a target demographic group, a target racial group of one kind or another, which is targeted by the other nations to become a scapegoat, to be tortured, to be sent to concentration camps, to be murdered. And so there was a period in history where the Jews, and even with Hitler, the Jews were targeted, persecuted, tortured in the most savage and hideous and barbaric ways. But it's not just the Jews that are on the target now. More and more you hear people circulating the idea that Christians should be the target also. So don't be surprised if you see a swerve in the direction of public opinion and you see the artificial creation of psyops designed to raise up armies of intense hatred towards Jews, armies of intense hatred towards Christians, and it continues to multiply because the globalist elite, ultimately, because they're Satanists, are behind this. They want to enslave humanity. And the best way to do that is for them to camouflage what they're doing, conceal what they're doing. But make no mistake about it, they want to get rid of billions and billions of people. Let's just say that right now we have 7.5 billion people on planet Earth. They would like to reduce that by 7 billion. They want to kill off 7 billion people and just leave a remaining 500 million people to be their servants or their managers. That's what they want to do. I'm not making that up. That's in their own words. I've read it. I've quoted it in my books. That is what they have said their plan is. Now, final thought. God didn't give us this information to make us afraid. God gave us this information as a heads up so that we could be more than conquerors in Christ Jesus and turn back the attempted invasion of the enemy. I had on July 4th, 2025, 7 years after I had a July 4th, 2012 prophetic vision, 7 years later on July 4th, 2025, the Lord gave me a deeply intense prophetic dream regarding the future of America and the American dream. And I've talked about it. And one of the things the Lord showed me in the prophetic dream was that we're being given one last chance by the Lord. And that the Lord wants his people, that's us Christians, to restore the American dream. So you need to find out what our marching orders are. And each one of us need to obey the Lord and do exactly what he tells us to do. God bless you. This is Paul McGuire. Visit paulmcguire.us.